Obviously, this week is like hitting the jackpot. That's what Roland Burns, the CFO of Comstock Resources, said about the massive power outages in Texas. Like hitting the jackpot. What's he talking about, you might ask? Well, Roland Burns' company, Comstock Resources, sells natural gas, which is used to heat homes. This chart shows the price of natural gas. Know that bar at the end isn't the other side of the chart. It's the current price of natural gas. The price skyrocketed from just $3 per MBTU to $1,000, a 33,200% increase in 2 weeks. How is that possible? Did Comstock Resources find some super-powered natural gas that burns 300 times longer than what they used to have? No, of course not. They just decided to charge 300 times the price for the same old gas. And it wasn't just gas either. As soon as the storm hit, hotels and Airbnbs started raising their prices. There were hotels charging $1,500 a night. There were reports that people were buying things like food and water and selling them for multiple times the market price. This is a practice called price gouging. It's when you take advantage of people who have been suddenly put in a desperate situation by selling them something that they need for much, much more than what it's normally worth. For most of us, these practices defy all logic. I mean, people literally froze to death in their sleep because people got their electricity shut off. I mean, shouldn't we be doing everything we can to provide affordable, if not free, heat and housing to those who lost power? Well, that would be the logical response if your goal was to prevent as many deaths and other needless suffering as possible. But obviously the energy companies and hotels don't want this. Otherwise, they would have lowered their prices or even made their services free. They raised their prices several times the market rate, which shows that they're not just indifferent to whether or not people find shelter during this crisis, they actively want to make it harder. They only want people to have heat if they're willing to pay whatever absurd price that the company chooses. But this isn't happening because the people that run these companies are especially greedy or bad people. After all, a CEO's sole responsibility is to deliver profits to their shareholders. And what better way of doing that than massively price gouging people? In fact, price gouging is an embedded feature of capitalism. It exists because scarce resources are highly profitable to sell. For example, if someone bottled up some grass and tried to sell it to you, you'd probably laugh in their face because grass is everywhere. It's abundant. There's no need to pay anyone to get it. Likewise, if energy was abundant, that would make the sale of energy resources like oil and gas obsolete. So it's in an energy company's interest for energy to be scarce. It's in a hotel company's interest for people to need housing. If people are housed, there's nothing to sell. This is why the current housing and energy crisis has become a jackpot for these companies. People are desperate for heat and shelter, and these companies are making them pay ridiculous rates for it. They're preying on people's misfortune. So the problem starts with the fact that in capitalism, for someone to live, someone else has to first make a profit. Whether or not you have heat or a roof above your head depends on whether or not you make a rich guy even richer. But it doesn't have to be this way. These things can and should be a constitutional right for everyone based on the fact that there's simply enough to go around. There are 59 empty properties for every homeless person in the country. There's also plenty of energy, evident in the fact that most of the urban centers in Texas had power during the crisis, even though most of this power was going to empty office buildings and hotels. The truth is, this crisis has nothing to do with the weather or a lack of resources. It has to do with a fundamental question facing our society. Do we want to continue to live in a world where basic necessities are treated as commodities meant to make the rich richer? Or do we want to transform this system and replace it with a society based on meeting human needs above everything else?